Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I am so thrilled today to have a long-term colleague, friend, fellow podcaster, Darrell Evans on the show. Darrell, you are an investor, a growth partner, a fractional CMO, a co-founder of a business. You have a podcast, you write books, multi-talented, multi-hyphenated, serial entrepreneur. Thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh. Writing a book, not writing books, but I'm writing the first one. It's one of the hardest things I've done. But yeah, thanks, Annika, for having me. I'm super glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, and the first book, I'm sure, will lead to the next. I have no doubt.
That's how it kind of works. That's what they say.
Yeah. You are one of my favorite people to talk to about the digital ecosystem because you've been personally helping me. You've been my tutor, if you will, on how to make the best use of the behind the scenes intricacies of digital media and making sure, because you know that I teach these classes, but I also usually work on the strategy side, creating the personas, the brand, messaging, and then hand it off. And so I was like, let me get really into the back end, the details, the nitty gritty, so that I have a better understanding of that. And you've been in this business for quite a while. That's why you're such an expert. So I'd love to hear, how did you get into the business? And I know you've had some pivots and have some ones continuing along the way. So that's also a really important thing to me, is to talk about those pivots. And then we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the agency started roughly 13 years ago, 2011. So I got started with digital around 2003. And at that time, I was in a different industry, owned a different business, co-owned a different business at that time in the real estate and lending space. And so I was actually in both sides of that industry for quite some time, kind of overlapping 17 years combined. But I got started with digital at that time for one reason and one reason only. And it was two reasons. Number one, leverage in communication, and that would have been with email marketing. And then the second kind of driver was the sheer need to have a way to manage my day, to be quite honest, right? So we're just starting to see email come out at that time. And at that time, I was taking 20 to 30 or 40 new prospective clients in per month. I'd have 5 to 10, maybe 15 in process. Each of those people in process could be involved with, real estate transaction. There could be 5 to 7 stakeholders that are involved in any way, shape, or form. So I was having this communication challenge because it was always phone calls back then to take those listening audience members who are so native to text messaging back. We used to make phone calls back then quite a bit. And so that was the thing. So it was first email, and then I realized, we can actually generate leads, we can build websites, and it was obviously a little archaic back then. But to fast forward, I learned so much doing digital in those early days, email, then designing a website, and then getting on LinkedIn. I started my first YouTube channel in 2007 to help communicate. So now I'm taking 50-ish phone calls, sometimes in a week, and I'm saying the same things over and over again, Annika, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way. Thank God for YouTube. Right? Thank God for YouTube. And so I didn't become a YouTuber. I wanted to simply answer all the frequently asked questions that people were asking me every single week, and the answers were the same. So every person who asked, it was super important that they get an answer specific for them, but the general answer was the same. So I said, let me now record all the answers to the frequently asked questions that they might have about FHA loans, conventional loans, VA loans, the home process, the escrow process, the appraisal. So I just recorded them all. And back then it was a different process than using our smartphones or Zoom technology. Funny side note, when we would record the videos back then, we would transfer them from a camcorder or whatever we used to use. It would go through a thing called a FireWire that you plugged into your computer and then set it up from the camera to your computer. And it would literally take, I do it overnight because it took so long. It was so funny. And then I started getting traffic from YouTube, meaning I started getting calls from YouTube, and the calls started changing. So the dynamic was, hey, I need you to help me with my home loan. I'm like, great. How'd you get referred to me? And we're like, I found your YouTube channel. I watched all your YouTube videos. When can we get started? And then it was like the light bulb went on. This is 2007-ish into 8. And the market, of course, crashed in 8. So it gave me thoughts about, I'm on to something here. And not many of my colleagues seem to be. And then I realized there was a bigger, because I had a lot of investor clients in the real estate and lending industry. And I realized, these business owner clients too, they're like, they're still doing things the old way. They don't even know about this stuff. So me and my former co-founder, we met at the time, 2008. He saw me continuing to grow my mortgage practice through the through the recession, through the crash. And he's like, how are you getting all this business when everybody else is suffering? And I did have a collapse, let me be clear, really a big collapse, but I resuscitated my business so fast through digital. And everybody was like, how are you doing it? And I'm like, I don't have time to teach you. I'm trying to make a living. Anyway, one thing led to another, and we were like, this is actually a new thing, and it's not going away. It's only going to get bigger. And I'm like, I think I want to be a part of that. So that's how the agency got started. That's how we got to where we are 13 years later, hundreds and hundreds, if not between teaching, coaching, and doing the done-for-you work, probably over 1,000 companies now and, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for clients. So it's been an interesting journey.
That is a very interesting journey. And it's funny how life creates these pivots for us. You started
100%.
One industry, you were looking for a solution for yourself. And like most great providers, the solution that you found for yourself that worked so well, you were then able to pivot and create solutions for others. And that involved a lot of local SEO, local advertising at first. What did the landscape look like compared to now?
Yeah, at that time, it was in our company name. Our agency name at the start was Yokel Local Internet Marketing. And we were very tied to the local community because we were mortgage and real estate. I'd come out of the mortgage and real estate practice. And even though I did have a license in multiple states, I focused on, it was mostly in my backyard. And so we jumped right in to help business owners because at that time, we're in the middle of a recession, right? We're in the recession of the 2008, 2009, 10 era. And we're like, hey, stop advertising in the doggone phone book. They're charging you $5,000. Are you serious right now?
Oh, wow.
So it was local SEO, building them a website. It was organic SEO. And Google Ads came into play pretty quickly. And then, of course, it migrated and morphed into 2013. We're now doing email. We're now doing social media. We really quickly picked up. And then the evolution of that became a problem because now we've got all these different customers in all these different industries, mostly local at that time, although we did start to pick up some bigger international or national accounts, if you will. But now we started managing everybody's technology, and it was like, this person has WordPress website, and they have Constant Contact, and they just, everybody had different stuff, and that became a problem to scale. So I started looking at a solution like, this is going to be a problem if we always have to hire a specialist to work on their thing. So we started looking at HubSpot at that time. And a couple of years later, we decided to go all in and become a partner with HubSpot after testing a number of other platforms. But so we've been a HubSpot partner since late 2015. And not every one of our clients has to be on HubSpot. That's not a requisite, but it is important to understanding the complete solution of efficiency, data, reporting. This was early days before Zapier really took off. So we didn't have good APIs back then. So it was just tough to keep the data collected and in the same place and synchronized. And then the other big problem that we had to solve with HubSpot that helped us was we were an agency and we kind of owned their accounts. So we were like, we need to give them their own stuff.
Yes.
so that if there is a breakup, they don't lose anything. Like transferring them their data was a problem. So anyway, so that was kind of the journey there. And we've, of course, now moved into all sorts of industries because we operate with a framework. Not so much, we don't operate in a niche, we operate against a framework, and it's heavily about the buyer's journey, not the tactic. So we're a strategy company that executes tactics, but it's all about understanding our client's customer journey. And once we understand the customer journey, we can put our playbook against it.
I love the nuance of that because we're always told as business owners, you must find your niche, you have to find your ideal customer persona. And you're saying it doesn't have to be a niche. It can just be the commonality of the journey.
I really believe that. When we're talking about digital marketing, now I'm not saying niching down isn't helpful for some, but it doesn't scale. If you really look at it, you can grow your business and you can get to multiple millions of dollars if you stay in one specific niche, but it isn't going to actually scale to the highest level. And what I believe, and I've said it many, many times, is that humans do similar things along their path to solve a problem with a product or service, no matter what the problem is or the product or service is. But if we can understand that, oh, if I get in a car accident today and I might have a case and I'm looking for a personal injury attorney, there are certain things I'm going to do and behave in a certain kind of way. If I'm wearing glasses and I do, but I'm playing golf and my glasses are coming off, or I'm playing basketball and someone breaks my glasses, then I might decide I want LASIK eye surgery so I don't have to wear the glasses. Well, I'm going to go on a certain journey to figure that out. But if I end up in a restaurant, if I'm in a state or a city or a country I've never been in, and I'm trying to find the local restaurants that are not corporate-y, but they're in the community, I'm going to go on so we just try to focus on the buyer's journey. And once we understand that buyer's journey, the tactics all work the same. They just change, the cadence might change, the structure might change, but the platform, the playbook, as I like to call it, the playbook, actually doesn't change. You've got to get found. When they believe they want to inquire about the product or service, you've got to find a way to get them into your world, generate a lead, and then you got to figure out how you're going to convert them and then obviously maximize lifetime value. That hasn't changed in any of the businesses I've owned and not one of the businesses we've helped. So we stay around the buyer's journey, and if we can understand it, we believe it can help. Now, if we don't understand your journey, then we're out.
Yeah. So people have to be very clear. And I think that's something a lot of, again, entrepreneurs have a great idea, but they don't really necessarily understand who their consumer is. And when you work with an expert, and as you continue in your business, you might find that it has pivoted a little bit. Maybe there's a different use case that you didn't think about for your business, for your product or service that people are using it for. We see that all the time with pharmaceutical. Right? So it can also apply to other areas of our businesses and to other businesses. You talk about strategy, and I forget the exact quote, but that's one of my favorite quotes, is that it's always the same things, right? You have to solve a problem. You have to show people how you solve the problem. You have to understand who they are and make them the hero. What about the other side? So the value of SEO, the ways we use SEO, the way you use email marketing, because I think that kind of got frustrating, but it's really, really important again. But we have to do all these other precautions. So what about the way we navigate through these tactics and ecosystems?
Yeah, it's a great question. So SEO is where we started. That was actually the main service we started selling back in the day. And actually, that was one of the ways I started my journey, which when I was in the real estate lending, I started my own blog and did the videos as well as the blog, and I was getting found all over the place. So search engine optimization, or SEO as it's called, is a top of the funnel tactic, which means SEO is best for discovery, for what I call here's the way I say it in my training. SEO is best to show up for the problem that precedes the purchase. What do I mean by that? The problem that someone has before they're ready to make a purchase is always going to be the best time for SEO to work, because I, as a buyer, and your buyers, and if you're watching this, if you think about your customers, they're going to go on a journey of discovery to solve a question in their mind as they think about the product or service they might need to address that problem. And Annika, in my seminars and my training, I always use a very simple example. If I have a headache today, there are a lot of things I can do to cure a headache. A headache could be caused by a number of things. From the most severe, it could be a migraine, all the way down to I slept on my pillow the wrong way and I've got a little bit of a tweak in my neck, right? There are a lot of reasons I might have a headache. And let's be clear, it could be something way worse. But the journey, if that's a recurring headache, and I've gone to my doctor and I've tried, like for me, I'm a guy who loves fitness and I try to keep my body as healthy as possible. But the reality is, if I get a headache in my body, my first run to is, am I hydrated? My second run is, am I stressed? My third thought is, did I sleep wrong on my neck? Fourth one is, did I tweak it at the gym this morning? So I go down a series of thought processes about identifying how I got the problem. And then let's say, though, that headache stays around for 4 days. Oh, now I've got an entirely different set of questions.
Right.
Why has my headache been bothering? Why do I have a recurring headache 3 days in a row? Well, guess what? I'm not the person to answer that question, but the doctor or whoever that professional is who speaks to that scenario. Now I've just Googled a long tail question, which, by the way, if you look at Google reports going back from 2004 all the way to today, going back to when Google first started, most people typed in 2 words, 3 words, 4 words maximum. Today, something like 70% of searches have more than 4 words in them. So you're an injury attorney and you want to rank for injury attorney, or you're a chiropractor and you want to work for a chiropractor, you want to rank for a chiropractor in your city. You want to rank for your name and your specialty. But the fact is, the best way to show up in SEO is to show up for the questions that your prospects ask on the pathway to your product or service. And so that's the short story or short part there. SEO is great, still great, tougher today than ever, especially now in a world of SGE, which is search generative experience, where Google is now testing AI and giving the search. So SEO is changing, and I really don't know where it's going to go, but I have a hypothesis that search engine optimization will become less effective more and more, because Google's job, if we understand Google's business model, is that I think 78 or 9% of its revenue comes from Google Ads. So they're not incentivized for SEO. That's our thing.
Right.
Like, they don't care about SEO. They care about one thing and one thing only. And I'm obviously very opinionated about this. And that is providing the best search results for every single search query of their customer. And let's be clear, the people who go to Google, those are their customers, not ours. We're trying to get in front of them with our thing, but it's their thing. So they're going to keep moving the search engine around until they make sure that no one's going to leave Google to go find their answer somewhere else. So SGE, for those listening, if you're not familiar, Google it. They're now starting to put AI results in the search engines and move further the blogs and the websites down the page. All you got to do is look at some traffic analysis to realize we've been going through this for months.
Wow.
I'm sorry, years. We've been seeing this for years.
Yeah. And I don't know that that's something that we talk about much. So hearing from the surface level perspective, right? You obviously are deeply entrenched.
Yeah, probably more than your audience wanted to hear about.
No, this is exactly what we need to hear about, because we need to understand, well, we're using SEO, maybe we're using even video SEO. Why is it not working as effectively now? So what are some ways to combat this or to make it a winner for us?
I'm glad you asked that question. So YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, owned by Google, right? So we are very heavily leaning into what we call expert-related content. So in other words, written content is no longer enough, right? We do not know what the true impact to SEO or search engine optimization is. When we talk about getting found at the top of the funnel, we don't really know for sure what it's going to look like, because it's just an experiment right now. It's the wild, wild west. Google's trying to catch up to OpenAI, who is ChatGPT. Claude is involved, which is owned by Anthropic. We don't know where it's going to go, but we do agree on, and be naive to think otherwise, is that search will change. But the key is, YouTube is a search engine that most people don't think of as a search engine, and that is a great opportunity. So the thing that I would recommend today, that I started back in 2007, was to answer frequently asked questions via video. And then through the power of that one communication, you now have the media and the asset that can now live in multiple places. And now we can use the power of AI. Because think about it. If you have a set of frequently asked questions in your industry, and everybody does, and you're willing to answer those questions on camera, and I know that that scares most people, but let me tell you, jumping out of an airplane without a parachute is way worse. Trust me. Just think about it. You're saying the same thing to a camera that you would have said to your prospect via phone or on a Zoom call or in an email. But if you can get into the idea to create all of this content, number one, it can live on YouTube and be discovered. Number one. Number two, you can now repurpose and put that content in other places, i.e. your social media channels, i.e. use them in email, i.e. on your blog. And of course, now AI is our best friend now, because AI can help us take the very raw transcript of that and turn it into a lot of the media assets that we can use cross-channel. So while we are saying SEO could be changing, there's so many other opportunities to look at to recapture and regain our traffic. And of course, Annika, we didn't talk about it yet, but we're big in paid advertising. We've always been a believer that we don't want to play the roller coaster game with Google. We will play it, but paid advertising is another aspect where you can control distribution, you can control awareness, and you can control the messaging such that it reaches the right people. And you got to understand that AI is powering Meta, it's powering Google, it's powering almost all these ad platforms. So they're getting super smart at finding your people for you, but you have to have the content to get that to work for you.
Yes. I'm so glad that you said that. I do have a couple questions about the content side. And then I do want to get into the world of paid, because that also can be a very mysterious world if you haven't played in it. We talk about YouTube being the number 2 search engine. We know that TikTok is also used as a search engine for the younger demographics. It's younger than we are. And right. It's short videos for the most part on TikTok, although they are letting you play with a little bit longer form. But those could also be used as YouTube shorts. Right? So you could actually repurpose the content so you can have the same questions answered on different platforms to test out where your audience is and what kind of response you're getting. So that's one thing that I immediately thought about. I would love to hear your perception about the different social media opportunities beyond Google and YouTube. And then the other day, you and I were talking about the fact that when you're working with clients now, one of your requirements is that you are able to get them a video recording of them speaking. Doesn't have to be that video that you're going to use, right? But just so that you make sure that you're really speaking in their brand voice when you are creating content, whether it's organic content or ad-driven content. So I know those are kind of 2 big areas for you to discuss, but.
Yeah, I love it. Both questions are great. Let me start with the latter. At the end of the day, when a brand, a company, a professional service provider, a CEO or a founder, generally speaking, and again, we've been doing content for clients for a long time, we don't call ourselves a creative agency. So I want to draw a distinction. We're not a PR agency. We're not a branding agency. We're not doing creative to do what we would traditionally think of, which is brand awareness or impression-based advertising, which is the old school advertising model. We live at the lead generation. We live at the brand awareness to lead generation to conversion level. So we're playing at a little bit different level. So my answer will be based on that context. Short form is a good path of discovery on any of the channels, the YouTube channel, the TikToks, the Instagram Reels, the Facebook Reels. It is all the same. However, I do believe that the goal that we try to strive for is understanding, are we creating content in the brand's voice, in the expert's voice, from the context and from the level of acumen of the expert that we're writing for or creating content for. And for years, we've hired writers in our agency, and I mean, they've got degrees and they're experts at writers. And we'd hear this thing of, well, the content's good, but it doesn't sound like how I would say it. Well, the content's good literally, but there's some nuances about how it actually works in practice. So there's a delicate balance between writing content for search engine optimization and writing it in the brand voice, because the brand would write it the way they say it, but that won't rank. Then we'll write it the way it'll rank, and then that's not the way they would say it. So I was like, in 2018, I'm like, well, shoot. Well, we've been using platforms like Zoom for quite some time. We were using a different platform before Zoom, and then Zoom came out. So I just said, what if we just interview with a client once a month and ask them the 6 to 8 questions around the blog topics that we're going to write that month, get their perspective, not have them write it. And let me tell you this, they also hated to do all of the editing and the back and forth with our writing team. So we're like, they hate the editing, but they don't like exactly how it's said. It's literally correct, but not the way they would write it, but they don't want to write it because they're busy professionals and we get it. So we had to try to solve that problem. So we were like, okay, we'll interview them with the 6 or 8 questions, whatever it may be, and then have the transcript go to the writer. And of course, now today it's even faster because we could have AI reverse engineer how they said it, the voice, the tone. And that's really the goal. How does that then repurpose into social? Because now we're able to obviously cut our editing time, cut our efficiency, and save them a bunch of time. And they love talking about themselves. They love talking about their craft. They just they don't want to do all the writing. So we've kind of looked at that as the best opportunity for us to create content, number one. Number two, get their voice and their face into the content without it being a lot of hoopla. You and I are media people. We are okay in camera. We've accepted this as our craft. But lawyers don't want to do this stuff in front of the camera, and doctors don't have time for this stuff. But they will sit down and have a conversation with you, and that became the unlock. And those aren't the only industries, but the person who created the thing that you're selling or marketing, they will talk about that all day if you ask them to. And then if you ask them the right questions, they'll talk for hours. But they never would sit down and do the video on their own. So we just use a digital studio, virtual studio, and it gets everybody the best of both worlds. And then we can use that for organic, on the blog, on social, and in ads. And the reason we like it in ads is because now it's not just the stale creative that looked good, came out of, Illustrator, is native to the platform as the organic native content itself. And that's one of our goals, is to keep the content as native as possible so that it is engaging. Because in social, as in ads, most people don't know this, but the number one word we talk about in our agency is engagement. If the content doesn't get engagement, it'll never convert. And that's measured a number of different ways, but engagement is the only thing we're after. So I hope that helps in some way, but that's kind of our approach.
Absolutely. And I would love now to talk about the world of paid advertising. You have very clear opinions and thoughts about what works and what doesn't, because I think when you're learning about paid ads, a lot of times it's like, okay, you have to narrow down to your exact persona on the back end of now Meta, not just one of the platforms, right? So you go into the ads manager and you say, people who like these kind of magazines, this music, who are in this age demographic, and maybe have these other psychographic tendencies. And that is the way that I was taught. And of course, I'm not in this business every day of actually creating and implementing ad spends. And you've taught me something very different. And you've taught me about the library and how I can look up my competitors' ads. And I actually have used that in my classes to show my students what they can do to do a really easy competitive analysis. But I really want you to dispel some myths for us here and talk about how we can really make an impact with our ads.
So for context, everyone, we started running ads 2012, and I'm a practitioner, not just an owner, investor. I've never owned a business that I didn't operate. So I don't stay operating as much as, but I'll never I don't just put money in, or I just don't say I'm the owner. I do the work. Like I still love marketing. I still love the hands-on to this day. So having said that, just for a little context, in about, I don't remember the exact year. I want to say it was 2020 or 2021, maybe 2019. Speaking of Meta, for example, Meta was at the time just called Facebook, and Facebook owns Instagram. So when we're talking Facebook or Meta, we're talking Facebook and Instagram at the same time. They got in trouble for something called Cambridge Analytica. And it was a data scandal, allowing data to get to people that shouldn't be getting to the data. It was influencing elections, etc. Some people are familiar. They were then at that time kind of forced. I think their hand was forced to remove a lot of the targeting options. So before this happened, we would have all sorts of targeting options, targeting by age, by gender, by race and ethnicity, by income, by likes and interest and behaviors, and a lot of other, types of things. And the algorithm, though, since 2018-19 has been matured. In fact, the things that we used to do to try to get narrowly focused on a target market is no longer necessary. And in fact, today will hurt your campaigns because their AI and their algorithm has been rebuilt. And what we say, Annika, and what you're referring to here is your two jobs as an advertiser are to choose the right campaign objective, meaning what do you want the goal of this campaign to be? Is it to get a lead? Is it to get a sale? You pick the right campaign objective, and the targeting, we now leave it to Facebook. We leave it to Meta. Their algorithm knows more about its 2.9 or 3.3 billion users. I don't know how, I can't keep up, but the algorithm knows, their auction and algorithm knows more about the user behavior than we do. So whenever we put our own thoughts over the top, I only want to talk to people 35 to 44 because that's who mostly buys. That might be true, but you don't know that that's where they live. The way someone taught me about it and got me to open my eyes to it, and they said, someone who advertises to someone who likes Ford trucks, you don't realize that a third of the audience likes Ford trucks, a third of the audience is a neutral, and a third of the audience actually hates Ford trucks. And yet you're saying to Facebook, only target people who are interested in Ford trucks. The problem is you're only reaching a third of the audience. So the job then, number 3, so we let Facebook take the wheel. That's my favorite phrase now. Let Facebook take the wheel. We let Meta take the wheel on the targeting. So we use open targeting almost across the board. We put no targeting in anymore. We'll put the age range, and we keep that as open as possible. We'll put the location, city, state, country, right? We will put that in. But after that, Facebook take the wheel. Our job, though, why can we do that? Why do we do that? Because that could scare some people. The reason we do that is we focus then all of our attention on the ad creative and the messaging. So whether it's written or video or imagery, we spend all of our time making sure that the message in the creative, the video, the audio, or the written word and the headline does the targeting. And we call it, I call it, it's not, I didn't make it up, but I believe a copywriter, I wish I could give credit to the copywriter who made this up, but it's called dog whistle copy. Dog whistle copy. What is that meant by? Well, we all know dogs have a higher hearing frequency than humans. They can hear things we can't hear. So when your dog goes crazy and you're sitting there minding your business and that joker gets up like mine does and runs to the door as if there's a threat,
right?
It's because he heard the neighbor across the street open their garage and shut their car door. And you're like, what the heck is wrong with you? Well, the thing about dog whistle copy is it repels the wrong person and it pulls in the right person. And in order to do that, you go back to something I said earlier, you must understand at a high level the buyer, not just demographics, but your buyer psychographics. How they think, how they act, how they speak, how they move, what bothers them, what frustrates them, what problems are they trying to solve. You've got to get good at that and then test all of those different frustrations and concerns and problems and anxieties and troubles that they have in their world. And that's your job, is to create the items of ads, the creatives, against all of those messages and do that consistently. Let the algorithm go find the people. Now, I am speaking just about Meta at the moment. You can't apply this openly to TikTok and to YouTube, although YouTube is getting there, and as is Google. Quite honestly, Google is even getting to the point where they don't want you to tell them what keyword to bid on. They want you to tell them the category of the keyword and let them go figure it out, and then give us 9 or 10 ads to work with, and we'll show the ads to the right people at the right time. So both platforms are saying, spend more time, tell us the job that you want the ad to do, and tell us the type of creatives and messaging that you want us to test, and let our system go do the work.
Wow. So people must be more intentional about the messages that they're putting
100%.
out. Yeah.
You got to get crystal clear about, again, just think of it this way. When someone is scrolling on their newsfeed, I'm just going to stick to a social example. Someone's on their phone and Facebook or Meta shows your ad or renders it in the newsfeed. The wrong person should skip right by it. Mm-hmm. The right person should stop and pay attention. It doesn't mean they're going to convert, but that little subtlety of behavior sends a signal to the algorithm. Here, let me give you an example. I target small to mid-sized business owners, small to mid-sized businesses, mostly in America, but elsewhere. If I start an ad that says, are you a small to mid-sized business owner who has struggled with digital marketing over the last few years and are having trouble getting an ROI from all of your efforts, even though you're trying, watch this video. See, if you're not a small business owner, first part of the sentence, you should just skip the ad.
Yeah.
Right? And if you aren't struggling with digital marketing, I've just given you another out to skip the ad. And if you are getting an ROI, I've given you a third reason to skip the ad. So I put 3 little hooks in that ad that I really want the condition of all 3 of those to be true. And then I'll serve up a 1 minute or 2 minute video. Again, not a 30-second reel or a 12-second reel, a 1 to 2 minute video. And then we can gauge whether someone watches all of that video. Now, we won't know who they are, but Facebook does, Instagram does. And so that behavior then sends a signal to the algorithm to find more people who would respond to that video in the same way.
Nice.
And that's part of my 3-tiered strategy that you know about, which is part of my social media ad simplified program. But that's kind of what we're doing. So the job is get crystal clear. And if you don't know the problems, pains, concerns, anxieties, worries, frustrations of your client, then you'll never do well in the ad creative side. The objective is easy. Either want someone to buy something or signal their interest in buying something. And that's our job. To me, it's never been easier. And I said that to you. And I know that's frustrating to some people who may be struggling with it, but it's really gotten simpler than running 10 ad sets, 20 campaigns. We run maximum 3 campaigns at any given time. And we let the algorithm do the rest of the work. And then we work on cycling in our creatives. And that's it.
There is one thing that you told me that you should pay attention to, which is what you want the behavior to be from the ad, right? Because I remember you did tell me something about that, where people sometimes forget. They say that they want awareness, but that's really just making more people see the ad and see their page. It's not compelling them to take any actual action that makes them become a customer or a potential customer.
There are some frustrating things, and I want everyone to listen to me clearly when I say this. Both, and by the way, I'm going to keep Google's guilty of this, and all the social platforms are. That's LinkedIn, that's Facebook, that's Insta, that's X. It has never performed for us or our clients, so I can't give that advice. Here's the thing. If you open your ads platform on any of these platforms, they will give you generally 8 to 10 different objectives: awareness, website traffic, video views, messages, calls, engagement, like campaigns, get new fans. Let me just shorten this for you. You have only 2 jobs when you run an ad. There's a third job only later when you've done the first 2 right. And that is, if you're a business that runs e-commerce, you have no business running any campaign other than a sales campaign, and that is in the objective. Do not run a campaign objective other than sales if you're selling an e-commerce product. If you're a professional service business that does not have a checkout experience, which means they can't go from your ad to a checkout experience, then you should be running a leads campaign. There is no other campaign objective in the platforms that matter except those 2. Take it to the bank as of right now. And if you think you're going to run an engagement campaign and then get them to engage and eventually go buy, you're wrong, because the algorithm is behavioral based, and they will serve the ad to people who are likely to hit the like button, the comment button, or the share button. But it doesn't mean they're going to buy. It doesn't mean they're going to become a lead. We love video view campaigns, but not for the reason most people think. We use video view campaigns. So if I back up and tell you, when we do this little video creation project, we love to run video view campaigns to our targeted audience using the messaging strategy that we talked about a moment ago, not because we want to get those people to convert, but because we want to elevate what? Top of mind awareness in a marketplace against the problem that this provider or this company can solve, which can then be retargeted later. But even some people want to start with that because it's cheap. We only put 5% of any budget to this type of campaign, but people can't take it to the bank and they get irritated because they only want to spend a little bit of money. But no, you've got to do leads or sales. And so that picking the wrong objective is where most people's campaigns are done from the start. They're done from the start. And I can tell it a mile away. I'll give you one quick story. There's this national company. I don't know where people are listening, but there's this new thing now called auction businesses, where they're in local markets and they buy merchandise, and it's like a local eBay, in my opinion. They have an auction site, products go up for bid. And here in my city, it's called Nellis Auction. And there's another company that reached out to us to help them. And in any case, she says, Darrell, she's the head of marketing. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to call her by name, but here's the head of marketing for this company that has 5 or 6, 7 locations, whatever it is. And she says, yeah, something's wrong with our Facebook campaigns. That, we need you to help. And I said, okay, tell me about the data. And because we always start with data, we have a 4-tier process. Start with the data, analyze it, make a plan, and then take action. We never start before that. We don't take action before the data. She gave me the data, and I said, oh, what's your campaign objective? I already knew what it was, by the way. The data tells me everything. I'm not trying to be that smart, but I've been doing it a while. So when you tell me the numbers are that far off, and she gave me the data by telling me we spent this much money and got this many link clicks. The minute she told me, she was telling me the metric was link clicks, it told me she was running a traffic campaign inside of Meta. Well, a traffic campaign means you ran the ad and told Facebook to find people who like to click on buttons and click links. That doesn't mean they want to buy.
Right.
It just means they like to click links, and Facebook happens to know who those people are. And it's cheaper, Annika. It's cheaper. It's really cheap. In fact, you can get clicks for 30 cents, 20 cents, 12 cents. And so you can get a lot of clicks. And then you don't get a conversion, and you wonder what's wrong with your campaign. And it's not your landing page. It wasn't even necessarily your messaging. It was simply you told the algorithm to go find people who are happy to click a link. And that's the distinction. And it took us years to figure this out, but that is almost where everything is. And so when I mentioned to her, you're in the wrong campaign structure, she was like, what do you mean? And so we educate, and they didn't hire us, by the way. No, just a little consulting session. She paid for it, whatever, gone. Hopefully she's doing better now. But sometimes it's as simple as just the wrong campaign objective.
Yeah. That's powerful.
It's painful when I see it, actually.
Yeah.
Because they're so frustrated.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's like one switch, though. I always say, by the way, one of my companies is called Mind Shift. And like I always say, you're one shift away from the breakthrough you've been looking for. And I seriously mean it. In that kind of scenario, her whole entire ad efficiency and ad spend, they may never, ever come back and hire an agency because that might have been the unlock and all that what she needed. And we're happy to do it. If it's one thing and you don't need us, great. We'll give you the one thing. Don't even pay us for it, right? So.
Well, and that's the perfect segue, because my next question was going to be about the Mind Shift name. That's the name of the podcast. You're rebranding a little bit of everything maybe under Mind Shift.
Yep.
So will you please talk about the name? Because I think a lot of people associate it with meditation or, manifestation, those kind of things. So I want to talk about it in the context of business, the name of your podcast, how long you've been podcasting, and then a little bit about the book, because I know we have so much we could cover, but I just want to give a little taste.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the name of the podcast is the Mind Shift Podcast. And we also have the Mind Shift Business Academy. And our agency will be changing names to one of the Mind Shift umbrellas as well. So I got to jump back to 98 for a quick second. And there was something in my personal life that happened. And I had 2 boys at the time, and the relationship came to an end. And their mom decided to move to another state here in the United States. It was at the time 1,360 something miles away from where I lived. And so I was dealing with my own life of understanding that my kids would not be in my life on a daily basis anymore. And that was a challenge. And so it's around 2000 at this time, and it's been a couple of years. And of course, you go through the emotions of it and you do the thing that you do. We all do it, no matter how much personal development work and how much personal growth work. And I've been involved in personal development by that time, by 10 years. But when you're emotional and you do a lot of blaming and you wonder what you did wrong and you just do a lot of introspection. Well, bottom line was I developed a framework, and I had to come to step 1 in what I call the Mind Shift framework, which is I had to make peace with the facts that they were going to live there and I was going to live somewhere else. And I couldn't get by the situation without making peace with the facts. Step 2 was I had to shift the way I thought about being a dad. And that's literally, I just shift. How am I going to be a good dad when they're living there and I'm living here? And you could talk yourself into all sorts of tailspins about what that now new story means. And I just remember saying, okay, I can be a good dad if they live over there. I am going to have a relationship with them living over there. So that's step 2 in my model, which is make a new decision. So you've made peace with the facts, but now what is the new decision? I'm going to be a good dad no matter where they live, no matter where I live. Okay, then what does that mean, right? Because this is before FaceTime and before cell phones had cameras, and this is all before that, right? So what does that mean? Well, that means, I've got to go travel and get them because they're 8 and 2. That means I've got to go see them when I want to go see them, which means I also then have to pay the bill to go see them and fly them back and forth because they can't get on a plane by themselves. So you go through all of the stories. So what is that decision? Okay, so that decision leads to this decision. Because of that decision, what's step 3? Well, what's the plan to pull this off? So step 1, make peace. Step 2, make a decision. Step 3, make a plan. And then, of course, when you make a plan, that sounds good when you draw it out on paper or a chalkboard or a whiteboard. But then next step 4 is now you've got to make it happen. And making it happen is usually a series of commitments that you must repeat on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis long after the feeling you made it in has passed. Because in theory, flying back and forth to Texas, which is where they grew up, from Vegas, is, depending on the time of the year, that's a $400 flight to a $700 or $800 flight. At one time, it was a $1,300 flight because of something going on with fuel. And I have to go there, and then I have to get them to come back. So I got to pay for their ticket. So that's how Mind Shift was started. I didn't birth the word Mind Shift until 2019 when I started the podcast. And I realized that I wanted to talk to entrepreneurs and leaders, inspired people that I knew and I had been associated with, and talk to them about their mind shift moments. And I call it the path from inspiration to realization. And then when life knocks you down, from breakdown to breakthrough.
Yeah.
And it's just the way I saw my life. So you can be inspired about something, but how do you make it happen? How do you get to the goal? And then, along the way, you're going to have bumps and bruises and roadblocks and challenges and things aren't going to go right and failures and setbacks and all those things that people call it. Then what did you do when that happened and how did you get to the other side of that? And so that's what Mindshift is about. It happens in my business life. It happens at the agency. It happens in every day. And that's sort of the birth of Mindshift. We started podcasting July. We started our first episode July of 2019, July 19, 2019. I think we just, at the time of recording this, we just released episode 287 yesterday, as a matter of fact. So, and you, I have to say, Annika, you have been an incredible inspiration to sort of the rebirth of my journey as a podcaster, because it started to feel a little bit of you've taught me a lot about the things that I haven't done to really take the show to the next level, and your dedication and commitment to podcasting and the model of media that we're a part of in that group. And I've been an entrepreneur over here, but I'm not a media guy. So I'm learning to be a media guy. And you've been extremely helpful. So I definitely want to shout you out for that, because it's been a pleasure watching you and listening to you and learning from you. And I really appreciate our collaborations.
Oh, thank you, Darrell. I do too. I love your expertise and how knowledgeable you are, how willing you are to share your knowledge, particularly like today on this podcast episode, where people are learning secrets that they might not read about if they're just trying to Google, how do we do Facebook ads? Or if they're just going through, through the Meta system or a Google system. So what's next? You have this shift, you have a book that you are working on.
Yeah.
Is that going to be released this year?
Yeah, it'll be out this year. It's funny. The project of the book has been one of my worst procrastination projects I've ever. It's very interesting. On the surface, you think certain entrepreneurs, you look at certain things that people have done, and I have a demon called procrastination that is just a battle. It's been a battle forever for me. That being said, I started the book. I hired a coach, sat down, and I said, hey, help me write this thing, help me do the thing. I got chapter 1 done, but I was wrestling, and I'll tell you why I stopped. The book will come out, and the book is for entrepreneurs, and specifically, Annika, it's for entrepreneurs. There's a statistic in the United States that has been haunting me from the agency side forever, and that is 91% of small businesses in America never spend more than $1,000 or invest more than $1,000 a month in marketing to grow their business. 81% of small businesses, according to the studies from the people who have way more money than me to study this stuff, 81% of all small businesses in America are one-person businesses. And then a number that really came to light as on my agency side is that about 95% of all small businesses make less than $1 million a year in gross revenue. And most small business owners, 60-something% of small business owners, make only about $55,000 a year in their entrepreneurship endeavor. And I'm like, you should have kept the job. You left the job to go make $50,000 and take all the stress on. So I have a heart to help. And so the book name was going to be The Lean Growth Method, which is a philosophy that I've been teaching and I've used. And it's a philosophy of 7 pillars that I've used to grow my business over the years, largely because I was one of the 81% at one time. And I know what it's like to live on a couch, start a business with nothing, grow it, hustle, grind. And also I know what burnout looks like. I know what it looks like in a real way. I put on 30-something pounds. I had high blood pressure. I did all that. And I was like, this is going to end bad, right? It's going to end bad. So my intention behind the book now, the book title is going to be changed. I'm not going to say the name of the book today because I haven't trademarked the name, but we did land the domain. But the theory of the book is how do smaller sole practitioner entrepreneurs get a business model built into their business so that they can reach the 7-figure mark? Because I'm concerned with a number of things. Number one, the longevity of that business, meaning is that business going to die with you? Number two, are you leaving anything for those that come behind you in your name? Like generationally speaking, are you creating anything that will live beyond you? And number three, it shouldn't be stressful and hard and you only make 60 grand a year when I know you're talented and you probably left something making $130, right? That is something that I can fix. I know I can fix it. I've watched companies on the marketing side, and the book is going to largely be about marketing because that's one of the core essences of how I've done things, but we're also going to, through the academy, address team building, superstar systems. I mean, some of the things that go outside of that. But it was a challenging pivot for me on the book because I made a mistake. I made a mistake, and I was trying to write the book for two different people.
Oh.
And that was really what hit me. As a marketer, I made my own damn mistake, and I didn't realize that I was really trying to write it for two different people. And the problem was every time I sat down to write, I was just stuck. And I'm like, this is not coming out the way it's supposed to come out. So there's something wrong. And so blessed Tamika Sims for being patient with me. I hired her. She's been with me. She's helped authors write over hundreds, several hundred authors write books. And then every time we were showing up at the meeting, I wasn't moving forward. I felt bad. And I said, listen, I'm probably a very bad client for you right now. I said, but I am stuck and I need to step back away from this project and rethink why I'm stuck. It's not that I don't know the material. And it turned out, Annika, that I realized I was writing the book for two different people. And I had to decide, who am I writing this book for? Because it's not for me. I already know this stuff. It's not for me. And I felt like I got to get clear on who in the world this book is for. And we did get clear. I got clarity on that. So we're about to restart that. And I do believe it'll be out before the year is out for sure.
Amazing. Well, you've given us a little taste of who you are, Darrell, all of the different things that you have expertise in, your journey, your podcast, which I encourage everybody to listen to. And the best way to find out more is through your own branded website, darrellevans.net, where people can kind of poke and push buttons and learn more.
Yeah, I'll go through darrellevans.net and anywhere on social at Mr. Darrell Evans on almost every platform. And wherever you are listening to this, watching this, I am the type of person that it's never profit first when we have a conversation. If you have a question, anything that's piqued your mind or your interest, I'm happy to answer it. If you DM me, I'll be one who replies. If you find my email and email me, I'll be the one to reply. Even though I do have a team, my assistant does look at my emails. I just believe in one-to-one connection, even though I'm a digital native now. I believe in the power of relationships and honoring the time you spend here watching this show through Annika's platform. And so if you have a question, feel free to reach out on any subject. I'm happy to be a resource.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Darrell Evans. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. And this is to be continued. I know we have many more things in the works. So
absolutely. Thank you, Annika.
Absolutely. Thank you to everybody who is watching or listening. Come back, follow, and keep in touch with us. Let us know what kind of content you want to see, what questions you have, so we can bring back the best innovators to help you make your journey a little bit easier. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.